Euros.
Oded, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good.
Wow, I like the background. Where is that?
It's in my head, I think it's in the hills of LA somewhere. But the main thing is that there's a tennis court, there's some lawn chairs, and the sun is shining.
Just what you need.
Exactly. How are you?
Yeah, good, good. Thanks. Everything okay?
Good. Well, thank you again for joining me today and sharing some of your time with me. I know we prefer to do this in person when we can, but this will do as well.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's always great to talk to you and to talk tennis. So, yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do this. So you've been the head national coach for the western side of Canada here for quite some time now, and so like walk me through a little bit. Like, what does your work sort of currently look like, and what is your day to day right now focused on mostly?
Yeah, well, this started in 2011, part of the Tennis Canada system of, finding young talent and developing them into world stage tennis players. And the West Coast program is part of three regional programs in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, which feed into the National Tennis Center in Montreal. And basically, my responsibility here was to put together a program which could identify, scout, I'd say kids at a young age. You have the aspirations and the profile to become good international players in the future, although it's very difficult to predict. So providing them with the resources and the means as far as a training environment, as far as a team environment, as far as sports science umbrella, exposure to international tournaments. So over the years, we were looking to enhance this on the West Coast. The West Coast has had some great success with the former or current pros, mostly handmade by their parents, and this was a kind of a thought to just give more kids the opportunity to fulfill their dreams and have chance to climb the rankings. So what I do basically is, I look at the young ages. I go to tournaments. Right now it's COVID, so I can't really see much. I go around the clubs and try and see those kids with the spark in their eyes, with with the profile, with the ambition, and bring them together, the good players with the good players, to start training together, without leaving their clubs, basically supplementing their club work. But the main idea is to get the good players with the good players. So there's a push, there's a stimulus for them, and educate them to higher standards, higher bigger habits, and try to expose them to more of the core, the world core of tennis. If it's really travel, but also understanding that beyond BC there's much deeper tennis environment, and we've had some very good players come out of this province, and going into collegiate tennis, going into National Center in Montreal, and hopefully one day, maybe the West Coast will produce a successor to Vasek and Rebecca, who are amazing, and beautiful to be helping kids, build life skills and also build the excellence around sport.
Of course. And I know you speak a lot when you and I chat about the environment that you create for the best athletes that they train together. How important is that team spirit and a team environment in training and pushing each other? And I think it goes all the way up to Dennis and Felix, who have sort of each other and who push each other potentially. How important is that in a younger child's development to have other players that push them in training?
I think that's essential, because kids, they need kids, and one of the reasons they stay in sports at an early age is because of the social component. I think later on as teenagers that changes, but it's definitely something that is important for them to be around kids. They can't just have individual closed environment with a coach, it doesn't work at that age. On pro level, for sure, it changes, but kids want to copy kids. They want to be around kids. They can compare themselves and they can compete against each other. So the more that you can bring them together, I think they benefit from that. And obviously, if they have the same level of values and standards and habits, the push is very positive, and then they climb even more. With that said, you can't separate the individual needs. So, I think it's important to have a private coach and to work with a private coach. And on top of that, you have that team spirit stuff and the teamwork and the team environment that pushes you every day. And it's important that, kids with the same aspirations be around kids with the same aspirations. So they have the same desires to get better. And like you said, I think tennis is a very individual sport and it becomes very lonely. So, I think at the earlier stages of development, if you can eliminate that loneliness and create kind of on the one hand, a camaraderie, but on the other hand, a rivalry, I think that's a big benefit for young kids.
And as I was doing a little bit of research on you today, I saw a phrase that you use called "plant the tree straight." And do you want to talk us a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's like in everything probably, but it becomes very important in a sport like tennis where, it's an early initiation sport, late specialization sport, and you have to get the right blocks in place early on. It's not related to the outcome or the performance part, but it's related to the process. And in everything that you do in acquiring a sport, there are windows of opportunity. So for example, to be a very good high level tennis player, you have to have great coordination. You have to have good speed, and those things are trained very early on. They're determined at the age between the ages of 8 to 12 probably. And as such is also the technique component. You want to have, the right form, the right grips, the right swings at this early age. So, you really planting those blocks, those seeds correctly, and then, that tree can grow into a huge tree once they hit puberty and after puberty. So, those ages of 8 to 12, not only on the technical, physical components are so important, because it's also important to provide the passion, to provide the habits of training, the values, So when I say planting the seeds, it relates to everything basically, values, to habit standards, to physical development, and to technical parts. Whereas the learning to compete and the performance part, that may come later. And it would be much easier if you do have all those things in place. So, the formative years are critical, and I guess that would relate to most sports. But that doesn't mean that you should count out anybody that doesn't have results at 14, 15, 16. They may have results later on. And I can tell you at the end a little story about Aslan Kartsev, the fresh semi-finalist in the Australian Open, but we can leave that.
Please do. No, please do. Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Go for it. Why not?
Well, it's funny because he moved to Israel from Russia at the age of 2, and with his family and the big immigration that came from Russia, and started playing tennis at 4 years old. And at the time when he was 10, I was directing the whole national junior training program in Israel. And he fell into my program at the age of 10 and spent 2.5 years in that program. And, I say this because if you measured his profile as an athlete or a competitor, he was really below average. On the other hand, his passion, his desire, his fighting spirit were extraordinary. But he wasn't on anybody's books, not even mine, I must be honest, because he wasn't a great performer at that time. And, he didn't show anything significant. He was quite a chubby kid. And then at the age of 17, before he had to really decide if to join the military service in Israel, his father decided to take him back to Russia and continue his tennis development. And that continued for another decade or almost a decade before we really saw him on world stage. You know, he appeared at 25, you know, and suddenly at 27, he's in a semifinals of a major. And that's just to show, you know, that he did have the right seeds planted as far as technique, you know, as far as habits, standards, passion. But he wasn't ready to have any junior results, not at 12, not at 14, and not even on the ITF Junior Tour. And the perseverance and, you know, the push of the family and, you know, seeking to find a way to make it, you know, it's a great story. I mean, you know, this guy, he persevered the tough years, which are, you know, you don't make money, you don't get into tournaments, you have to do everything on your own. You know, like, it's not that anything was given to him. And so it's just a reminder that if you have the will, you have the desire, and you have the planted seeds, you know, in place, many things can happen.
Very true. That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And it's you know, like, you've seen so many players in your time, you know, leading a lot of the performance players in Israel as well as now in Canada. What are some of the key values or priorities that you would say that you're trying to set with players that you're working with on court or that you're advising off court?
Well, I think, you know, there's some very measurable criteria, but unfortunately, I don't think those are the critical ones. You know, we can measure how fast a kid sprints or how far he can jump from the spot or how flexible he is, but I don't find after 35 years of coaching that those are the key determining factors of success. I rather think that, you know, the characteristics that are more in the heart or in the mind, which are not that measurable, those are the factors that really determine success. And I'm talking first of all about competitiveness. You know, you have to be very competitive, and you can see that in a kid very, very early on, you know, like being competitive, wanting to win, wanting to succeed, hating to lose, you know, in everything you do, not just in tennis. Yes. I think that's the number one thing to look at, you know. For me, you can see that many times in the spark in the eyes, you know. You can see kids, the spark in their eyes to get better, to keep working, you know, and etc. You know, the other thing is the passion, of course. You know, you need to love it. You really need to love it because in a way you need to love to suffer, because tennis is a repetition sport and you're going to spend hours just refining a stroke. You know, it's so boring sometimes. And if you're not willing to suffer and suffer also losses and set downs and, you know, like things like this, you're not going to make it. If you're looking for just a beautiful time all the time, it doesn't work like that. So you need to enjoy and you need to be passionate about the suffering component, which is kind of paradoxical, but that is the truth. So that's something you could also see as experienced coach, you know, you could see who is ready, who has that passion, that love to stay there, you know, and to come back again and to fall and to get up again. So, you know, empirically may be difficult to measure, but definitely once you spend time with young players, you can identify those components. So, of course, on top of that, you know, you need to have a physical profile. Genetics are important in our sport, but they're not, you know, they're not critical. You see athletes that make it and they're not that big in size. They compensate with, you know, high tennis IQ or speed or etc. But, you know, I think it's interesting. And also I'd mentioned that, you know, before puberty, end of puberty, I think it's very difficult to predict anything. You know, so many changes happen through that stage of puberty. And, you know, from the biological side, from the mental side, from the social side. So, you know, it's more about really, you know, giving opportunity and giving chances to a wider base of kids and then really filtering more after puberty. Yeah, that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, in a nutshell. I mean, in tennis, it's such an open sport and it could go into so many directions. And, you know, a lot of your answers direct us to that as well. One of my questions was, you know, how early can you really predict someone's success? Or, you know, there's families or athletes who have to make that decision. Do I go into university tennis or, you know, do I altogether switch pathways and stop focusing on attempting to go pro? You know, so would you say that that competitive spirit, that drive, that passion, that love for the sport is sort of the key factor in someone continuing to be going towards that pathway of becoming a professional player?
Yeah, listen, I think it's very important that a kid dreams. It has to have these big dreams. Sometimes you talk to kids and they're 10, 11 and say, I want to win Wimbledon, I want to be number one in the world. I mean, maybe it's not realistic, but they have to think like that. They have to think like that, and they will be the ones to stop thinking like that when they realize it's not that. We don't have to kill those dreams.
Yeah.
Plus, on the other hand, we don't have to be non-realistic and plant in them dreams that they don't have. I think the pathway towards high-level collegiate tennis and towards international world stage play is the same pathway. I mean, if you want to give yourself the best chance to go to the best tennis program, best academic program in the United States, or to be a international junior player on the ITF junior circuit, it's the same. You have to do the same things basically. You want to learn to have great habits. You want to train very hard. You want to give 100% effort. You want to learn how to compete the best you can. And then at one point, you do have to make a decision. At I guess 17, it's probably a crossroads where you have to say, okay, do I have the means, and am I ready, and to go on the pro tour, or do I need more time, and I can use the collegiate platform as a middle step before I jump into the pro tour, which is very common now. And just recently, Jennifer Brady, the finalist in the Australian Open, she's a UCLA graduate. She went on that route and took 4 years in that great environment to prepare herself for pro level. So, everybody is different. There's no timeline for your breakthrough or for your success. I think, because we have different backgrounds, we have different environments, we have different brains, we have different bodies. It's going to take different timeline, and it's important we just monitor where we are, and we are realistic, and we don't give up our dreams, and maybe we have to take middle steps to fulfill a bigger dream. So I don't think it's a life or death decision at 17. I go to college or I go to play pro. You could have a middle step, which is great these days. But what I keep saying is, at 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, keep all the doors open and keep doing the things as best as you can to allow yourself the most opportunities when you're 17. You never know, after puberty what will happen to you. And, if you enter a very high level academic tennis program in the United States, that's another piece of leverage. So, I don't think there's a lot of doubt there. It should be, yes, you need to take a decision at one stage, but, if you keep pushing the bar, one way or the other, and you have that great dream set, you're going to be able to kind of have the opportunity to go that way.
And what role do the parents play of a child's development within that tennis coaching development pathway for you?
Yeah, well, listen, there's different models of parenting. Ideally, we as coaches, we like to help the kids be independent. We like the kids to become, self-thinkers and problem solvers. We like the kids to follow their own dreams and not follow their parents' dreams. So, there's different cases. We also see cases of parents that are very pushy and they achieve something. We see parents who are very pushy and they break down their kids at one point. We see parents who are coaches and it's success stories, but we also see, I think, more cases where parents are coaches and there's not a success story. So, I don't think we can put everything in one template and say this is the way, but, I'd say from a player standpoint, if it's not your dream and you're not internally driven for that dream, it's not going to work as much. It doesn't matter how much your parent is going to push you. So it has to be that intrinsic drive. And I always give this analogy, you can't tie the carriage before the horses. The player, the kid is the horse. He has to be in front and everybody from behind pushing him. So, and there's always, exceptions. In my opinion, a parent has to be a huge supporter. He has to be, first of all, a parent, not a coach, not an advisor, a parent, because the kid is looking to the parent as his, first resource. It's my first love. It's my first supporter, so that's what you need to be for your child. You have to help your child have the best opportunities that you can allow him to develop, in the sense of, a good training environment, a good coach, the right exposure for international play to get the right perspective. But the parent cannot play for the kid, and the parent cannot solve problems for the kid, and the parent doesn't need to give it to the kid in a silver spoon. The kid has to fail, and I think this is what parents sometimes don't understand. There's no shortcuts. I think the failures and the down that the player gets into many times is what's going to bring him to grow more and to be even stronger. So allow your kids to fail. I think it's a very important part, and help them to get up as well, but don't try to make the excuses for them and shortcut the failures. I don't think that works. So I think in every family, the dynamics are different, but for me, the most important thing is to make sure that the kid is the driver in the car and we are just passengers, helping him to go to the destination that he wants to go. And we've seen a lot of models,
Right, of course.
We've seen a lot of models, but the healthier athletes are the ones that the parents really, stayed parents. At the end of the day, they stayed the comforting, supporting, loving parents, and not the ones that are trying to, make something out of their kid, which their kid doesn't want to be or cannot be.
And you mentioned there something about teaching players to become self-thinkers, problem solvers. And tennis being one of the few sports out there where there is no coaching during competition and during a match most often. How do you find coaching someone to perform on their own and to self-think, in your experience, works best?
Well, I read an article yesterday from Wim Fissette, the coach of Naomi Osaka, and he was talking about Naomi's earlier years. Her father was helping her, in Florida, and always had these coaches around her. And she said in that article, when I played sets, my father didn't have any time to go with me. So I ended up playing sets on my own, and I had to figure out how to win them, So that was actually a very good thing for me, because no one was with me on the court. Nobody told me you should do this, you should do that. I'm a competitor, so I had to find ways to win. So I think right there is your answer. Yeah. If you don't play sets and you don't compete, and you just take lessons, you're never going to work out things. You're never going to work out how to win a battle, how to figure out an opponent, how to identify your strength and identify the opponent's weaknesses, how to put your strength on his weeknesses. What are the patterns that I need to play? So guidance from a coach is important, but it's maybe 10%. At the end of the day, you have to spend time, going out there on a weekend and playing best of 3 sets, best of 5 sets, and figuring it out, not just the strokes, because hitting is one thing and playing the game is a completely different thing. You have to make decisions. You have to, you have to draw conclusions of what's working and what's not working. You have to make adjustments throughout the match. There are conditions that are not in your control. It could be a wind or a sun or, a bad day and you're not feeling the ball. And I think many youngsters and their parents are mistaken here. You think that you can overlook those things by just taking lessons in an isolated arena. No. You have to go out. You have to play diverse players, and you have to figure out things on your own. You really have to figure out. And you don't do it on the first time. You do it on the second time. Not on the second time. You do it on the third time. And that's how you develop more resilience. I think more tennis IQ overall.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you a stronger person, you know, because tennis
Mm-hmm.
is not something that you can read in a book and say, okay, if I do this, I get this, you know, because there's so many variables and those
Right.
change, you know, all along and throughout a match, and you have to keep making adjustments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting story of every single player when you're listening to sort of how they made it and how they wavered and moved through their tennis life, so to speak, on the way. And you know, so one of them that I wanted to talk to you about is Vancouver local Rebecca Marino, who just recently qualified, went through qualifying at the Australian Open, won her first round, lost in the second round, and you know, we locally here know sort of the challenges that she's gone through and what an amazing human being she is and how polite and friendly she is with everybody. And so I know that you've been involved with her comeback a little bit. So would you mind sharing some sort of inside stories from your end?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just echo your words. I think she's an amazing human being beyond what she is as an athlete. She is a very unique human being, a very bright girl, you know. She's gone through a lot. When I arrived here in 2012, Sylvain Bruno, the head of women's tennis, asked me to help Rebecca locally because she decided to come back from Montreal and train from here. And at that time, I wasn't informed with her situation, and it unfolded to be that she went through a huge crisis, which we all know, and you know, she basically moved out of the game because she couldn't handle it anymore. And you know, we had a very short time together on court, but we kept in very good contact. And you know, I always thought of her as an amazing woman role model, and also, you know, maybe in the future somebody who could help Canadian tennis, female tennis. You know, so we stayed in great touch. And at one point, I asked her in 2017. She was already studying at UBC and, you know, participating in the rowing program and all that stuff. I'd asked her if she would come out once or twice a week and, you know, play with the young BC girls and, you know, hit with them and give some advice. And it was a yes. She immediately said a yes, and I think she fell in love with that, and that kept her, you know, kind of connected to the game. And at one point, I think 6 months later, it was around the Oldham Brown, and the tournament director asked her if she would like to be a warming up a hitting partner for any of the girls. And during that week of warming up players, she asked to talk to me, and I remember that to this day. It was in the Hollyburn restaurant, and she said, "Oded, I want to come back to play tennis. You know, I feel that there's something that I have to finish off. You know," and that was amazing. Like she said it, you know, with tears in her eyes, and I could see the passion around
Mm-hmm.
it. And I see it's coming from a real place. Her father at that time was ill, and I know that it was important for her to kind of, you know, maybe allow him to see her play again. But I don't think that was the main reason for her to play again. It really was an incomplete thing that she wanted to complete and show herself that she has the strength to go back there and do it. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, and she started training. And she started training. You'd be surprised. She started training with 13, 14 years old in the national program. She said, "I'm going to do it out of here. Oded, please let me do exactly what these 14-year-old kids do. I want to come the same hours. I want to come to do the same fitness. I want to be part of this young program." And that's how she started. After about 4 months, you know, she needed more stimulus. So she reached out to Montreal, where she had, you know, Carol Zhao and Bianca and some of those athletes where she could go out and train. So she continued her training out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then very soon she went out to compete. And we know that during the year of 2018 and 19, she recovered her ranking all the way up to top 250, which was in a very short time, all on her own, traveling on her own, doing everything on her own, and, you know, relying on BC or Vancouver as a base to come back and train, but everything on her own. And she made a you know, a difficult decision. She had the Pan Am Games, and she was selected to play for Canada, and she was not 100% healthy. She had a plantar fasciitis injury and decided to go. and she competed with a lot of passion and fighting spirit, but hurt herself more, and that took her out 9 months of the game again. She was out for 9 months after that, and she never returned until Australian Open now. So because COVID came and she couldn't compete anymore. So basically for more than a year and a half, she was training, but she took it to another level. She didn't feel sorry for herself and say, you know, I'm 30, plantar fasciitis, bad injury, my ranking's gonna drop, you know, where am I gonna be? She took it exactly the opposite way. She, you know, engaged in a very, very strict professional routine, 2 practices a day, fitness every day for more than 10 months. She was baked and cooked, ready to go and compete, you know, but because of COVID, there was no opportunity. She does have a protected ranking, and then she decided she could use it to go to Australia. And from there, you know the story, you know. I mean, she surprised herself. I don't think she surprised me because I saw her all along this year playing a very, very high level in practice. And I knew, and I told her, you know, if you give yourself 2 years, some opportunity is going to show up there for you to go back into top 100 and maybe higher. And I think, you know, her mental strength and her courage to go out now to down under and do what she did, I think is a huge boost for her. And to be honest, an inspiration for every young girl and kid that are in these programs here in BC who had the chance to practice next to her and with her.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's a great story, and she's on, I'm assuming, for a full season of events coming up, hopefully.
Yeah, it's tricky now with COVID and for her ranking, but she's looking to make a smart schedule. It's always tough now because she has to come back and quarantine for 2 weeks, so she has to find, you know, a very intelligent schedule so she can compete but not lose weeks coming back to Canada where she can't train.
Right.
It's going to be a challenge, but I think she's very, very driven. And,
good. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And, you know, out of that story, for me, what sticks out is, you know, that she came back into the program and started hitting with 13, 14-year-olds and sort of took on that approach of, you know, I will do whatever it takes here to get out and hit and train. So, you know, quite often we would hear and see from young kids who are developing still that they just want to be playing with better players. And, you know, sometimes it comes from the players themselves, or sometimes it comes from the parents. Sometimes, you know, even the coach sort of suggests that. You know, I think it's a great example of you need to do what you need to do for yourself.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, Euros, because you hear that a lot. You hear that a lot from parents. My kid needs to play with stronger players, with better players. I tell you, she, for about 11 months, she didn't have a stronger player to play with.
For 11 months.
She made sure that, you know, she would just do her thing, and she could create a great practice with a 14-year-old because she would adjust her level to the 14-year-old and make sure that they don't miss one ball. So she doesn't have to hit at her, you know, hardest pace, but she make it happen. You know, these conditions came on her. She didn't choose, you know, but it's a great example. And I think that's a great message to any junior out there. You don't need unbelievable opponents to get better. On the other hand, it's important for you to play down because you're learning to play in pressure. When you're playing all the time up, you don't really face pressure. You know, when you're playing with a 15-year-old girl and you're Rebecca Marino, you have something to lose all the time. And I used to give her handicaps. You know, you start from a lap 30, you start from a lap 40, so the pressure is bigger. So that's kind of a way you close the gap and you keep the pressure on Rebecca. So, you know, I think just playing with better players, you're going to lose the part of learning how to play under pressure. Of course, you need to balance it out and you need to play. I divided 30, like third and third and third, you know, third with players under your level, a third with players your level, and maybe a third with players above your level. And I think it's up to the coach to decide when you're ready to do what, and not up to the player to decide. You know, you have to leave that for the coach because the coach knows you best and he knows when you're ready to do what. But that's a great point.
Yeah. And so I wanted to ask you from your side, because it's so obvious that you are extremely passionate about the sports. You love developing people. You're always open to sharing sort of your best experiences and knowledge as to what you've lived so far. And sort of what drives you as a coach, and what made you transition into high performance coaching when you were younger? And I'd love to hear, what is it that drives you when you're working with players?
Well, first of all, I played on quite a good level in the ITF junior circuit and on the ATP tour, on not a great ranking, but I played and I competed and I knew what it is. And I think I was deprived of a lot of the conditions. I was deprived of a coach. I didn't have those conditions as a youngster. And I realized when I was older that a little bit of advice and a little bit of inspiration would have helped me. So I felt that, not fulfilling my dreams as a player, I still had room to fulfill dreams as a coach, and accidentally I got into coaching. I went on the academic side. I was studying economics and management, but, I was called upon to help some juniors, national level juniors in Israel. And that ended up being starting from a 1 or 2 day commitment into a full-time job, which I fell in love with because I felt my destiny was kind of help people develop. I get a lot of reward from a satisfaction with working with youngsters who I can see growth and development and, passion and dreaming. And, we're basically not just teaching tennis, we're teaching life skills. And I think that's the beauty, when you take a young athlete of 10, 11, 12, you're teaching him to be a strong human being with great skills for life, and beyond that, you also try and teach the sport, and it's that leans on the human part. The sport leans on the human part. So I think that's a very rewarding component. I think it's a very, it's part of tennis, which creates a lot of burnout because high performance is a 24/7 thing. You have to be with your athletes. You have to plan for your athletes. You have to debrief with your athletes. You have to go with them and travel with them to tournaments. It's way beyond the hour. You have to deal with their parents. You have to deal with their problems. I'm kind of I think, in my personality, a giver. So I think it was kind of a natural fit for me into that. I think the sacrifices and the disappointments of being a high performance coach are much larger than the rewards. And you have to accept that, the rewards could be once or twice a year, your player did something good, but most of the time you are you're suffering. But like I said, the biggest reward is not the outcome. It's more the process that you see these young human beings growing up and, calling you 20 years later and telling you, now I'm a lawyer and I thank you so much for what you did in my life to help me be independent and strong and, make good decisions. So I think that's a rewarding part. And then you also have some rewards from athletes that went to the top of the game. But like I said, that is a very tiny drop in the ocean. I think in tennis, there are different streams of when you talk about coaching. You could be a coach educator, coach certification. You could be a coach at private clubs that deals with the adults. You could be a coach that deals with progressive tennis. You could be a traveling coach on the tour. You could be a development coach. I fall into the development coach component. I've done boys and girls, men's and women's. So I kind of I've been in all the production line, and I guess my preference is those formative years. And when you get a kid that is ready to do anything for you, you're ready to do anything for him. In the sense of putting it towards his dreams and his ambitions.
And what will be one of your favorite moments of coaching that you can recall from your career that sort of really stood out for you?
Well, when we talk performance, it's always measured by outcome. So instinctively, I would give you outcome moments, instinctively, but those are not necessarily the most beautiful moments because there are other beautiful moments. As far as outcome, captaining a national team, a Davis Cup team or a Fed Cup team or the Junior Davis Cup team for Canada. That was my first captaincy in Canada. I captained team in Israel. I think sitting on the court and captaining a team is one of the highlights of any tennis coach. Listening to the national anthem and the crowd, the home crowd, and being in that environment and guiding your country into a win or a comeback, whatever. I think that's always been my highest moments, and I had a couple of those, regardless of the result. There were some great results too. But also receiving a message or a letter or just some words of a former athlete that you coached at the age of 12 or 13 and now is very successful in life and very happy in life, and says thank you to your formative years of teaching me these life skills and everything. Those are amazing moments. So I can't put a finger on just one, but I would put
I'm sure many of them.
This is what I take in a lot. It means a lot to me.
Yeah. Well, no, I from my side would like to thank you for all that you do, because I know how many lives you touch, on court, but also off court, but also from the very top, for Canada, and obviously you've done it before in Israel as well. And I'm sure there's thousands and thousands of people who are quite thankful to a lot of the work that you've been doing. So thank you for sharing your knowledge again, Oded, and always a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, no, listen, this is a mission. Thank you for thanking me, but you don't need to thank me. I think it's my mission. It's my purpose. I feel, if I can inspire more, I like to do it. And, we're in a beautiful sport. Let's remember that this sport is not just about being professional and making money. It's a sport that gave you and gave me and gave a lot of others many things in our life journey, and it's a very unique sport when it comes to that. I don't think every sport gives those type of skills for life, and we have to love it and we have to enjoy it, but at the same time we can also do our best at it, so why not? We have an opportunity, grab it and do the best at it, whatever level you are, if you're a player, a coach, or whatever.
Exactly. Yes, in so many levels. And who's going to take it, Djokovic or Medvedev? What's your prediction?
I knew you were going to I'm one of the worst predictors
to put you on the spot.
To competition. I had my money from the beginning of the tournament on Medvedev, regardless of the final, because I thought he was coming into this tournament like really good from the ATP Cup, but also from a very good previous year with appearance in a Grand Slam final and winning the Masters. The guy is right up there. He's beating the top.
Yes, very confident.
But he's facing a very tough opponent that has a lot on stake today, and we know how Djokovic I call it, he has 7 lives. You think he's dead, you think he's injured, and he comes up with another life. So he's not going to let that one slip. I mean, he has to play very bad to lose this match. I don't want to take anything away from him, but it would be nice to see a change of guard also here. Well deserving Medvedev.
Right. Well, it's been an interesting Open, definitely. So let's see if the finals are gonna live up to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Oded. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure, Euros, and kudos to all you do for the game, and all you keep, growing in BC with all the different facets you touch, and we're lucky to have you, so keep that up.
Thank you very much. Will do, always. Yeah, and thanks for talking to us. Cheers. Thank you.